Dr. West, thank you for coming and joining us at Standing Rock. My first question for you is, there's the opinion that the pipeline is a municipal versus unincorporated issue, but can you tell me why it's a racial issue, and if so, why is it?
Well, first I want to say I'm just blessed here to stand with my dear brother John, my dear brother Terrence. But the first thing to say about what is happening here is that this is a spiritual movement that has political consequences. It is the culmination of a struggle of over 500 years of a dignified people who many people thought their backs were pushed against the wall and they could be rendered invisible. And it's clear that that's a lie. It's clear that what is happening here is historic, is pivotal, and even though it focuses on the pipeline, and it focuses on water rights, and it focuses on land rights, it really is the coming together of a spiritual peoples, of a dignified peoples, of a people who have been preserving their language, preserving their culture. And now that the nation and the world has to take notice, it's a beautiful coming together of all colors, all nations, all genders, all sexual orientations. But I don't want us to lose sight of the spiritual dimension of this, because that's what has helped sustain the dignity of indigenous brothers and sisters. And I'm just glad to be a very small part of this. I know Brother John laid this thing out.
They've called it an existential threat, having the pipeline, but people also call it the black snake, which sort of implies a spiritual issue. Do you feel that there's relevance to conflating the two?
Maybe we should say something about the prophecy and the dream.
Yes.
Crazy. We could say something about the witnesses sitting there. We could say something about what it means for chickens to come home to roost, which is to say to try to deny certain truths and act as if you can have business as usual. And what is happening now is that the history and the truths are coming back. And America now has to come to terms with this mistreatment of indigenous people. The world has to come to terms with this mistreatment of indigenous people here and around the world. And this is the site of the manifestation of this national and international spirit and struggle. And that's why my dear brother John, my dear brother Terrence are, for me, very precious comrades. And they're not just political comrades, spiritual comrades.
Why do you believe that Obama has not intervened on behalf of the Native communities?
I think that my dear brother Barack Obama has just been afraid to fight for justice in the way in which he ought. I think this is true for politicians oftentimes, no matter what color they are. They always have to check and see what the polls say, and they have to check and see what their counselors say, and so forth. Barack Obama has Martin Luther King Jr.'s face represented in his Oval Office. And Martin Luther King Jr. was a spiritual warrior. He didn't have to check a poll to fight for justice. He didn't have to check a poll in order to fight for what's right and what's moral. So that's a fundamental difference between Brother Barack Obama and Brother Martin Luther King Jr. And if he were alive, he'd be here, and his spirit is very much here. And it's here with the veterans, it's here with the indigenous people, it's here with the children, it's here with the elderly, it's here with all of those whose hearts and minds are set on being free.
Many people have supported us spiritually, materially, donations. In your opinion, what else can people around the world do to support this movement and movements like this one?
Well, one is to try to create movements in your own context. If you're in New Zealand, you ought to be in solidarity with Maori people. If you're in Australia, you ought to be in solidarity with the Aboriginal people. If you're in Canada, you ought to be in solidarity with the indigenous peoples there. If you're in Latin America, Peru, Bolivia, and so forth. Now, this has become now the site for the world. This is not just regional. This is not just national. This is global. And that kind of global consciousness among indigenous peoples cannot but be a force for good, because the condition of truth is to allow suffering to speak. And our precious indigenous brothers and sisters have been suffering for too long without people taking notice of their suffering, even as they struggle in so many magnificent ways to preserve their dignity and their pride.
How does the struggle here and abroad relate to the nascent Trump administration's policies on economics and environment, in your opinion?
I think that Donald Trump is neo-fascist in effect. I think he's so much in over his head, he doesn't really know what he's doing. I think he's such a narcissist that he's out of control in terms of his ego. But neo-fascist regime in which the rule of big business, big banks, and big corporations on the one hand are tied to scapegoating the most vulnerable, Mexicans and Muslims, and black folks, and poor, and women, and indigenous peoples, and so forth, and militaristic ventures abroad. And we see that now with Mad Dog Max, who's very much a militarist to his core. But what we're seeing, though, in a raw form is what has been beneath the surface in America. And it is now so very clear and undeniable: the racism, the militarism, the mediocrity in terms of how he thinks and what he does, the cold-heartedness, the mean-spirited, the callousness, the indifference toward others. And that doesn't mean that all Americans are like that. It means that those particular values that people are acting as if they had pushed to the side and now moved to the center. And it means that Americans of all colors can now choose which side they are on.
Do you think that relates to why American banks haven't divested, but Norwegian banks have?
Because the 1% is in the driver's seat. Under Donald Trump, Wall Street's in the driver's seat. Under Obama, Wall Street was in the driver's seat. Under Clinton, Wall Street was in the driver's seat. This pipeline is about money, profit, revenues, greed, and indifference toward the suffering of indigenous peoples. Well, that's precisely what the worst of capitalist civilization has always been about.
All right. I have one last question for you, for people at our cause. You've been through the civil rights movement. You've been to Occupy. You've been on the front lines of a lot of movements with a nonviolent approach. Here at Standing Rock, we all have to deal with getting very angry and frustrated. Do you have any words to support us in our struggle and our prayers to staying in a nonviolent place?
Well, again, I think that any time we have to be true to the best of our ancestors. And our ancestors taught us to have dignity, taught us to have compassion, taught us not to be in the same gutter as the gangsters who are coming at us. That doesn't necessarily mean that one is a pacifist, but it does mean that one is struggling on the inside to preserve the best of who we are, even as the worst of our foes are coming at us. Brother John was telling a story about the young people standing with the peace sign, with the water cannons coming at them. That's memories of Selma, Alabama, memories of Montgomery, Alabama. We saw the same thing with our Latino brothers and sisters under Cesar Chavez in California. Same thing, Rabbi Abraham Joshua Heschel, with our Jewish brothers and sisters in New York City. Same thing with our Asian brothers and sisters in so many contexts. So it's a human affair. But the battle between, we were talking about this in the car, the battle between the absolute pacifists like Martin Luther King Jr. and those who we are committed to spirituality, but also believe in self-defense. Well, see, that's a natural debate. You're going to get that debate all the time. And I think that's very important. You just have to make sure that John Coltrane called a love supreme. That's not tradition. That's not tradition.
Unless John has another question. I feel like that's a good way to end this interview. Thank you for your time, Dr.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Sure.
So what do you see as the prospects for the convergence of like Black Lives Matter and broader African American struggles?
Well, there must be not just a convergence, but there must be solidarity. The Black Lives Matter movement will never be what it ought to be without embracing indigenous people's struggle. And indigenous people's struggle can never be what it ought to be without embracing Black Lives Matter. And I would say the same thing about poor people around the world. I say the same thing about working people around the world. Any slice of humanity that is vulnerable are part of the focus of what is going on right here, what's going on with the Black Lives Matter movement in a variety of other places. That's another reason why we stand together so strong. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
On that question, I'm curious about the whole rising, the recent occurrence of social political movements such as the Arab Spring,
Absolutely.
and then Black Lives Matter, and now this. Like, do you think this could have happened without these previous movements? Bernie Sanders, I would call it a movement. So can you talk about that kind of like historical analysis?
Well, one is that the important thing is to always keep in mind the specific features of each movement. Now, see, what's going on here is a movement that has been going on over 525 years. That's not true for the Bernie Sanders campaign. That's not true for the Black Freedom Struggle. We've been going for 400 years, not 525. And not with the backdrop of the land ownership, not with the backdrop of the sacred burial grounds, not with the backdrop of having that intimate relation with sea, sky, land, and so forth. So that even though there's a coming together of all of those movements, there's something that is quite distinct and something that is rich and powerful and profound that's going on here that is different than Black Lives Matter or the Bernie Sanders campaign or Occupy or the Arab Spring. We all come together in solidarity, but I think a lot of us have to learn how to listen closely and learn from our indigenous brothers and sisters because they don't fit the Western paradigms. It's a challenge to the Western paradigm. Even though as human beings, we all suffer, we all struggle, and we can all come together based on a morality and spirituality.
I guess my question though is more about, it feels like these movements have created a spur of strength and for people to actually feel the power to rise up. Do you feel that in any way has influenced
actually, all these movements are signs of hope. All these movements encourage us to straighten our backs up and take a stand in the name of justice and truth. There's no doubt about that. Empowering to each other, inspiring to each other. Absolutely.
The question of indigenous political leadership.
Indigenous political leadership?
In all the movements, in the broad spectrum of struggle.
Well, I think we asked Brother John to say a question. You want to answer that, my brother? You want to answer that, brother?
Well, it's hard for us to get elected, when our government is overwhelmingly in one direction. So, it's like asking where's the black leadership in our government, where's the indigenous leadership of our government. It's 98% rich white men, so that's in general.
In the struggle.
Well, the reason that we have a struggle is because we don't have that power, and we want it. We want our piece of equality. We want our piece to be able to be heard. And some of that does have to do with working up into the political realms. There's always leadership around us, but we have to get those leadership into the right places. That was how Barack Obama got elected, was having that leadership in the right place. Did it turn out? No. But that's what people's hopes and dreams were meant on. Do we need more indigenous leaders to be able to make their voices be heard? 100%. Would we be having this same problem if our government was diverse? Probably not. If there was indigenous people in the government, then probably not. But until we get to those, until you have to vote for those people, if we vote the same old oligarchs in over and over and over again, it'll have this same effect.
As indigenous people, we only represent about 1.5% of the population, which makes it extremely difficult for us to obtain any political power. 5 Native people ran for state house this year in the state of North Dakota. All 5 of them lost because we're not a majority. We're not a majority. So we have to try to grasp whatever voice that we can. And here, we try to shout. And 300 indigenous tribes have come to stand with us. People from all over the world have come to stand with us. And I think it's because they have a connection with the land. We have a connection with this land. This is where our ancestors' bones are buried. And that gives us the strength to stand up and stay standing.
Your name?
My name is John Bigalow.
Standing Rock.
Yes, I'm an enrolled member of Standing Rock. My Lakota name is Patesan Ochila, White Buffalo Boy. I'm an Unkpapa Lakota from this land.
Terrence Daniels, and I'm Eastern Delaware Nation, an African American. So, I mean, this really was the culmination of both parts of my history. My father worked in social justice, Dr. West, of course, and, you know, my family, we have the same issues that here, you know, land being taken, polluted, stolen in some cases. So with me personally, that was my drive to even get Dr. West here, was because that's both parts of what's going on here, and both the struggle to me is the struggle. It's the same thing. I see no difference between the two or in any way, shape, or form.
And I would have had this, though, that being a black man, coming from a people who've been terrorized for 400 years, traumatized for 400 years, but trying to teach the world so much about freedom, being hated for 400 years, trying to teach the world something about love, that spiritual leadership is a kind of political leadership. It's a power. It's a way of sustaining people in motion and in movement so that they challenge the status quo, even if, in fact, it looks as if the terror and the trauma coming at them would crush them. And so the two are intertwined in that way, and I think that does bring together black brothers and sisters, indigenous brothers and sisters, and many others around the world. So that spirituality and political power goes hand in hand, but we need more of both. And that's what's so magnificent about this moment, because